If you click this video expecting insane WWE entrances, you're in the right place, because we're not just talking fireworks and cool music here. We're talking tanks rolling into WrestleMania, wrestlers pulling up with wild animals, entrances so ridiculous they looked illegal, and moments so over the top that the crowd completely lost their minds before the match even started. Some of these entrances made people feel like they were watching a superhero movie, while others were so chaotic that WWE probably wishes we'd forget they ever happened. And trust me, the deeper we go into this list, the crazier it gets. It all starts with one of the most random entrances WWE fans have ever seen. Matt Riddle pulling up with a camel. Yeah, an actual camel. Even AJ Styles looked completely confused standing there watching it happen. The crowd didn't even know how to react at first, because nobody wakes up expecting a camel to casually walk into a wrestling arena. But somehow Riddle made it work because the dude acted like this was the most normal thing ever. And honestly, that's what made it hilarious. The confidence. Bro was riding out like he just came back from a side quest in the desert. But as ridiculous as that was, it still wasn't crazier than the time Scott Steiner decided to walk to the ring with a tiger. Not a fake tiger, a real tiger. And the funniest part is the tiger clearly wanted no part of this whole situation. You could see it in its face. Meanwhile, Steiner's over there acting like he's the king of the jungle while casually petting the thing. The 90s and early 2000s were truly a different universe because there's no chance that flies today. WWE really looked at a massive predator and thought, yeah, let's bring that near thousands of screaming wrestling fans. Absolutely insane. And somehow that still wasn't enough because another wrestler once made an entrance with 2 bears. 2 bears. At that point, WWE entrances were less about wrestling and more about surviving a zoo encounter. The crowd looked terrified and fascinated at the same time. You could hear the commentators trying to hold it together, while everybody in the arena wondered what would happen if those bears suddenly stopped cooperating. Back then, wrestling entrances felt like nobody told production there were limits. Then there are the entrances that aged so badly you can barely believe they happened. One wrestler came out being billed as the Middle Eastern Nightmare, and even back then the whole thing felt uncomfortable. Watching it now feels like opening an old group chat and immediately regretting it. WWE used to push boundaries in ways that would never survive modern television. The crowd reactions were wild, but looking back, it's one of those moments where everyone collectively goes, yeah, maybe not. Thankfully, things got weird in a different direction when Finn Balor showed up looking like he escaped a horror movie. His Chainsaw Man-inspired entrance was straight up terrifying in the best way possible. The lighting, the outfit, the energy, it felt less like a wrestling entrance and more like the final boss of a slasher film arriving. Texas already has a reputation for chaos, and Finn somehow added to it by looking like he was about to chase somebody through the arena with a chainsaw. Then there's Kurt Angle randomly becoming Spider-Man for a night. Out of nowhere, the Olympic gold medalist is literally descending from the ceiling into the arena. The crowd lost it immediately because Kurt already had intensity, but adding a superhero-style entrance somehow made him look even more dangerous. He came down looking locked in like he was about to wrestle for the fate of the planet instead of a championship match. But speaking of intimidating entrances, few things in WWE history looked more aggressive than Rusev rolling into WrestleMania on a freaking tank. The second that thing appeared, the whole arena exploded. It looked like the opening scene of a war movie. The tank alone made him feel unstoppable before the bell even rang. He looked like a real-life movie villain pulling up to conquer the arena. The Dudley Boys brought tables, but Rusev brought military equipment. And then there's Shotzi Blackheart, who somehow made a tiny tank one of the most beloved parts of her character. The funniest thing is the story behind it. She literally found the mini tank at Walmart and thought it would be funny to use on the indies. Then she sent Triple H a video of it, and suddenly WWE wanted it on television immediately. Imagine ordering an Uber XL just to transport a mini tank to Full Sail University. That's dedication right there. Fans loved it because it perfectly matched her chaotic energy. So when WWE called her up to the main roster and quietly got rid of the tank, fans were genuinely upset. It felt wrong seeing Shotzi without it. Then one day on SmackDown, the Tank finally returned, and people reacted like an old friend just came back from vacation. But somehow, none of these entrances are as unbelievable as the time Vince McMahon literally introduced God as Shawn Michaels' tag team partner. Yes, that happened. Vince stood in the ring completely serious while a spotlight slowly moved down the entrance ramp. That was the entrance. A spotlight. And the craziest part is everybody committed to the bit like this was normal. One fan in the crowd was literally bowing. The referee even checked the presence for foreign objects before the match started. You can actually see Shane McMahon in the background looking like he's questioning every decision that led to this moment. And just when you think the segment can't get any crazier, Vince complains that God's entrance music isn't exciting enough and changes it mid-entrance. That entire storyline feels like somebody lost a bet backstage. Then there's Kane, who might honestly own some of the greatest entrances ever. One of the craziest was when he came out chained up and escorted by police officers. Junior on commentary sounded genuinely horrified, screaming like Kane was an escaped monster from a horror movie. The pyro exploding from the ring post made it feel like hell itself opened beneath the arena. Even Eric Bischoff looked terrified standing there. Kane entrances always worked because WWE treated him less like a wrestler and more like an unstoppable force of destruction. On the opposite side of things, some entrances went full choir mode. Bobby Roode's glorious entrance already felt massive, but adding a choir somehow made it feel even bigger. Then Trick Williams took things to another level with a gospel choir literally chanting "Whoop that trick." Hearing an entire choir singing that phrase with complete seriousness was one of the funniest and most hyped things NXT ever produced. Meanwhile, Jable pulled up to WrestleMania like a billionaire CEO arriving at a corporate conference. Police escort, limo, full presentation. The man walked into the arena like he owned the building and probably everybody's house too. It wasn't flashy in the same way as tanks or pyro, but the arrogance made it unforgettable. Jable mastered the art of making fans hate him before he even stepped into the ring. Then Bad Bunny showed the world how to turn an entrance into an entire concert. The atmosphere was unreal. The crowd knew every word. The energy was insane, and it felt bigger than wrestling for a moment. WWE entrances hit differently when the entire audience becomes part of the show. But if we're talking legendary live performances, nothing hits quite like Aleister Black rising from the darkness while a metal band plays him to the ring. That entrance felt like peak black and gold next. Everything about it screamed aura. Then Bayley shocked everybody by destroying her inflatable tube men during her heel turn. The crowd started excited and nostalgic, thinking they were getting classic Bayley back. Then suddenly she starts chopping the tube men apart like she's ending her own childhood. It was one of the clearest heel turns ever because you could actually hear fans realizing in real time that Happy Bayley was dead. Kurt Angle also deserves respect for having one of the most intense entrances ever at the Royal Rumble. Dude came out looking like he was about to fight an entire army. Even the pyro looked more aggressive than usual. The man was completely locked in. But sometimes pyro goes wrong, like when Jeff Hardy accidentally got blasted by flames during an entrance on SmackDown. For a second, everybody thought something seriously bad happened. Turns out, he was okay, but it looked terrifying live. Goldberg used to casually walk through pyro all the time, but moments like that remind you how dangerous those entrances actually are. Then there's Al Snow completely losing his mind after winning the European Championship. Every week he represented a different country with increasingly ridiculous stereotypes. One week he's German, next week he's Italian carrying pizza, then he's tossing baguettes into the crowd pretending to be French. It became so absurd that by the time he represented Hong Kong with fortune cookies, fans just accepted the chaos. Meanwhile, years later, Jey Uso entered France and somehow turned the entire country into one giant yeet chant. The atmosphere was unreal. Thousands of people moving together like that created one of the coolest crowd visuals WWE has ever seen. Even Jey himself got emotional talking about how the crowd reminded him of Bray Wyatt's Fireflies. Then there's Edge, who practically burned through WWE's entire pyro budget every single entrance. The second that pyro hit behind him, he instantly looked like the biggest star on the roster. Same thing with Cody Rhodes now. Cody entrances feel like WWE gave him unlimited fireworks and told him to go crazy. Every WrestleMania entrance somehow gets bigger. The elevator rising, the massive pyro explosions, the dramatic presentation. It all feels like the final scene of a blockbuster movie. Roman Reigns mastered a completely different type of entrance. His entrances aren't fast, they're slow on purpose. Every step feels calculated. The crowd raising the ones in the air became part of the experience itself. WrestleMania 40 especially felt unreal once the orchestra version of his music started playing. It genuinely felt like the final boss arriving for the last battle. And Triple H? Nobody treated WrestleMania entrances like Triple H. Every year he tried to outdo himself. Conan the Barbarian, thrones, skulls everywhere. Tanks with Shawn Michaels. The man turned entrances into full Hollywood productions. But the craziest part is one of those entrances nearly seriously injured him after dry ice got stuck to his skin and caused burns before the match even started. Most people would panic immediately, but Triple H still walked out and wrestled the match anyway. Then there's John Cena at WrestleMania 25 surrounded by an entire army of lookalikes. Seeing all those identical Cena shirts moving together created one of the coolest visuals WWE ever produced. And finally, there's The Undertaker. The gold standard. No entrance in wrestling history ever matched the feeling of hearing that gong hit. The lights dropping, the slow walk, the druids, the smoke. Everything about it felt supernatural. Even his American badass entrance rolling out on a motorcycle somehow became iconic in a completely different way. Undertaker entrances weren't just entrances, they felt like events. The second his music hit, the entire arena atmosphere changed instantly. That's what makes WWE entrances so unforgettable. Sometimes the match itself isn't even the thing fans remember most. It's the moment before the bell rings. The spectacle, the shock factor, the feeling that literally anything could happen once that music hits. And honestly, after tanks, choirs, tigers, and Vince McMahon introducing God on live television, WWE proved a long time ago that there are absolutely no limits to how insane an entrance can get.